Dr. Karim, we're talking about Russia and the decision to confront Daesh. From the very first timing, Egypt and Russia were seeing eye to eye concerning the Syrian crisis, and they were for a political solution.
The engagement of Russia in the Middle East is considered a complete switch in the geopolitical map in the Middle East. Why? Because this is the first announced engagement for Russia in the Middle East, which is considered a different step backward to the U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. In the same time, Putin have announced a couple of times that what is happening in Syria is not considered democratic, it is not considered a rebel, it is not considered an Arab Spring, and so on. And he gave different type of support which was not formally announced. Now he gave airstrike against ISIS, but he is supporting clearly the Syrian regime, which is against the United States will and other countries. So this is completely changing the situation in the Middle East. What can happen, because a lot of countries is against and a lot of countries is with the action of Syria. What is happening in Syria is crime in all means, okay, and it have to stop one way or another. Such type of engagement may have two scenarios of implication. Either Syria will be able to put a military action that sees military activities or military progress inside Syria, and the next step will going for a political dialogue and let the other countries like Egypt or Jordan or other Arabic countries to host a political dialogue in order to go for some kind of settlement. And I see that the European Union, like Merkel and Holland, in the direction to accept such type of action, to make like a military cease activity, which means that some forces have to go inside and to stop between the conflicting parties. The next step, we're going for a political dialogue. Thing happens, this means there is a potential that the war in Syria may end within a couple of months. But at the same time, as a political point of view, it have a big question mark about the U.S. engagement inside the Middle East. This means that there will be a retreat in the U.S. Political influence inside the Middle East, because this means that their trial or solution in the last 3 years was not working, and Russia was able to solve it, and they went to solve the issue directly. The other scenario is that this war can be extended for some reason or another. Okay, maybe U.S. and Russia will go for some of a new Cold War dialogue, like what happened in Afghanistan. So this means an extension for war, and this means more devastation inside the region, because what is happening now that the Russian troop is targeting one of the military or militant groups that have been trained by the CIA. They are not mainly targeting ISIS, they are targeting the groups that have been trained by the CIA, and CIA is starting to raise concern. So if we go back to a new form of Cold War, this means that the war can be extended and the devastation can go outside of Syria in this case. This can reach Iraq, this can reach Lebanon, maybe la qaddar Allah, Jordan. So all of this have to be concerned and contained. What I see now is that the type of operations that Russia is going, they don't have physical troops on ground. Mainly they have air forces, and they use new types of drones. I hope there is some kind of an agreement between the big powers regarding how it will be solved in Syria. But in all means, it will not be solved without a military intervention in order to stop the conflict parties from using powers against each other.
Right. Well, more than one scenario that Dr. Karim mentioned.
Going back to Syria, that such type of conflict can be extended easily to Lebanon and to Palestine. Put in mind there is a lot of refugees camps in Lebanon and in Jordan. And you have now ethnic conflict inside Syria regarding Sunni and Shia. So this can make a lot of conflict zone. Put in mind also that Russia is not the only country that had a military engagement in Syria.
Right.
Last week, United Kingdom have announced they use their own drones to have some kind of attacks inside Syria. France also have a couple of airstrike. All of this is to have some kind of proactive strike against specific military targets where they see that these groups like ISIS or whatever, they will be having a direct threat in their national security. Put in mind that Europe will be one of the biggest nations who are suffering of the implication of what is happening in Syria. So refugees, the extremists, if chemical weapons, nuclear weapons have been engaged in this region, this can be easily transferred to south of Europe. For that, France, Germany, and United Kingdom are very concerned about the situation in Syria. I again repeat that I believe that some kind of indirect settlement or discussion have been done between Putin and Merkel regarding what is happening in Syria, and this is reflected by her messages that Bashar al-Assad can sit in the seat in order to have a political dialogue, in order to see a peaceful way of solving the issue in Syria. And then Holland and France started to say, I am not very convinced, but we can see if this is the only option
that we do have
to save the Syrian people, then they can discuss. Later on, you find that Russia have announced that they have a formal air forces inside Syria in order to attack ISIS. This means that not all of the targets that have been targeted in the last 48 hours was ISIS, but they are targeting specific type of militant groups that can consider a threat or a conflict inside Syria.
Right, Ambassador Shalabi.